Hello, hello. My name is R.C. Beckom. I'd like to read you a story called It's Coming. It's from Godhead Productions, www.godheadproductions.com. Say, in the story I tell, Armageddon is the effect of the evil's part to play as choice of being the aggressor. Armageddon's part to play as people will put them in groups, making certain people do certain things, perhaps being able to stand on a corner and watch themselves go right past them, doing the same as they were doing, causing them to feel as though they were living in a book. Aquarius will be the good. And now it's coming. That's the name of the story. It says, once upon a time there was an island called Thieves' Heaven, where no one was civilized. Everyone robbed, stole from the other, never wanted to see the other with anything. They had been put there by people of a more intelligent intellect and made to believe that the world was flat. This way, their evil disease would never spread to the majority of people who enjoyed life as it was. One day, the king and queen got together and decided to change the name to England with an A and give the peoples more amusement. So they decided to circulate a thing they'd call money to all the peoples on the island. And after the effect that this would cause on them, the people, they would collect it all back. As time went past, along came a man from some land other than the island whom the king saw would fit right into his plan. For he was a talker and had been many places and seen many things. So he, the king, decided to sick his queen on the man to help put his game into action. The queen, listening to this man, began thinking that he was a bit crazy, for all he would talk about was the world and how big and round it was. But she, the king, and all of England knew that the world was flat, and that if you go too far, you'd fall off the planet. But the man kept on insisting that it was round. He was so persistent that the queen began telling the king about how much the man would talk about it. The king, thinking of a new scheme, thought to himself, the more people, the sweeter his scheme. Besides, he had nothing to lose and all to gain. So he told the queen to give the man 3 ships, and that anyone on the island that wanted to go could. But everyone the man told of his plan thought he was crazy. When he told the queen of this, she made up a proclamation saying that anyone in her dungeon could go free if they would go with this man. In the queen's dungeon were criminals of all walks of life, and all of whom were more than glad to go, feeling that they would get out of there no other way. The man now had more than he needed, but he took them all. They sailed 40 days and 41 nights. The man, having heard of an island called India, came across land. Thinking that this was India, the first people that he saw, he named Indians. These people that he named Indians never had seen any people like these befriended them. They taught them how to live on the land. All the people from the queen's dungeon who had traveled with the man stayed in the newfound land. But the one ship that the man came on went back to England to report to the queen. Once back, he went directly to see the queen. Upon seeing her, he told her what he had found. News spread it all over the tiny island of England. Almost everyone got excited and wanted to go see the new world. With them they brought pigs, wolves, rats, roaches, crime. The people who already were inhabiting the land before it was discovered by the new people and now called Indians, saw these new people begin to kill off the Indians' main source of meat. For these people who had come as friends were now the enemy. They fought, but more and more of these people came. They, the new people, began building towns all over the place, but mostly along the water from whence they had come at first. The king suddenly began to lose interest in his newfound game, for he saw no value in it. He then told this to the queen, but she, seeing that most of her people was traveling there, saw it as a place that she would just love to rule. So she told him this to the king. Having found new interest, he told her to do as she saw fit, and he had her back. She then began sending her troops to rule over her people. The people, not wanting to be under her rule, went into war against her and gained their independence. They, the new people, were now on their own, and the queen still their friend. They then decided they were going to give her a piece of the newfound land also and make the rest theirs. They began killing off all Indians and anyone else that got in their way, taking anything they saw that they wanted. But not liking to work, they had to find someone to do it for them. First they began by putting themselves in slavery, but that didn't work, for they all looked alike, making it sometimes hard to tell who was supposed to be in bondage and who was not. Then they, the new people, began to capture the Indians, but couldn't keep them, for they knew the island better than they. So the next step was for the new people was to find someone who did not look like them and that did not know the island as good as them. By now many sailed the high seas. Someone told of a people that might fit the bill if they could be captured. A plan was then put into effect to do just that. The people put up to do this task were called Dutch. The Dutch and the English were of the same breed of people and had no problem with the plan of the English. So they, the Dutch, went to work immediately. They went into the shores of a place they called Africa and attempted to steal what was called people of darkness. Like the English, they the Dutch, first befriended the natives, giving them tokens of gratitude. As the natives began to like them, the Dutch, goods, the Dutch began charging them things like rubies, diamonds, emeralds, and people, etc. At first, the natives brought every source of items but people. Seeing this as a love of their fellow natives, the Dutch then decided to try and create a diversion of distrust among them, thus causing them to go to war among each other, while in turn then caused them to begin to sell the other. They, the Dutch, now was ready to begin their breaking techniques, and they had set up a little island just for these purposes. First they began with the men of these people. They cut out his tongue, thus killing his tone of speech. They would then take the pregnant woman of these people and let them see executions of their men, things like bending down trees with ropes and tying his arms and legs to separate ones. They then cut the ropes, sending him flinging in 4 different directions, thus having an effect on the child she was bearing. They would then cut her tongue out or put her in such a state of shock that she wouldn't speak. When the child was born, it could only speak the language it heard. Those speaking their native tongue was told to speak English. If not, they were put to death. They would take the man of this race and breed him with as many of the women as possible and move him on to elsewhere. Many of these people were of a gifted nature and had lots to offer. The ones that broke were shipped to the New World. The natives worked hard and long and slept little. They were given the name niggers, which meant they were good for nothing but to be told what to do. But some didn't like it, and some would always rebel, causing the English to put them back in chains. But the English needed workers, not freeloaders. They then decided to teach their religion to these people. They taught them things like when they died, they'd go to a place called heaven, which was in the sky. They told of an almost white man of whom they had described as having blonde hair and blue eyes named Jesus, who had been born somewhere in the middle of time. They said he had come to die for the sinning souls of the world, and that he should be remembered for this once every year, and that after he died and came back to life, and he moved to a place called heaven where his Father named God, the creator of all life, lived. They were told that he, Jesus, had did many things like heal the sick, raise the dead, and did not like ugly, and that they, the niggas, should love their fellow man regardless of what their fellow man did to them. They were told that if they were hit on one side of their cheek, they should always turn the other cheek, and that if someone wanted their shirt, they should give them their coat, and also that they should always smile while doing it. Thus, having a lot of niggas accept this story, it divided them further apart among themselves, making what was called house niggas and field niggas. More and more of these people began to call on this man called Jesus and ask for his acceptance and to guide them out of this sin that they had been committed to deserve, that they must have committed to deserve this kind of punishment. But this did not stop anything that ever happened to them, but this gave them a lift. and inspiration to have someone to call on in their times of need, but not realizing that the first ship that their people came in was also called the Jesus. They made this Jesus man many of things, being told that if they kept calling on him, on this Jesus man, one day he would return. Niggas even began preaching about him, teaching their children about him. Things like, in order to gain salvation, one must have faith, letting them feel as though one day they would be just like the English or just as good. What they needed to realize was that they were also rewarded by their own deeds, which meant that if a person didn't do anything about their present situation, they had nothing coming. The English, seeing that they had gotten through to these people, now knew that they could take the chains and shackles off of their feet and wrists, what they now had on locked in their mind, and they, the English, could now work on new creations. They had heard and seen that there were more people of color than of themselves, and for some of them now, many traveled on the high seas, they had stolen some of their most potent weapons. One was a thing called gunpowder. With this and a thing called a gun and their knowledge of religion, they devised a plan to rule the world and all people of color.